And it's a great entry point to the conversation today. I will say I'm delighted to welcome my friends. You already know them. These are folks who need no introduction. Maritza, of course, is a seasoned political journalist. John Tester, of course, is a seasoned farmer who, for a period of time, moonlighted as a United States senator. And I am delighted to have both of them here on the Treason Substack. And let me just say at the top end, this is something we would usually say at the back end. If you are not following these two on the Grounded Substack and their Grounded podcast, you're missing out because they can toggle between some of the most deadly serious topics in the country to sort of self-deprecating irreverence and back in like a breath. And that's what I love about watching them and listening to them. So, click the faces in the upper left of your screen. And if you're not following them, you can follow them there and pound that heart button to give some love to our friends at the Grounded Substack. So appreciate you both joining us today. And one thing that I wanted to talk about on the serious side is this announcement today that the Department of Defense of the United States of America is now going to be the Department of War. So we talk about time traveling back to the 1950s. Before the National Security Act of 1947, it was the Department of War. We changed that for a couple of good reasons, one of which is the notion that we don't want to suggest we have a permanent bureaucracy hell-bent on making war. We want to emphasize as Americans that our U.S. military is meant to defend the United States, not to wage war in these forever wars that politicians on both sides of the aisle have raged against. And Senator, I want to throw you the microphone first. I mean, look, you were on Senate committees that tied into national defense. You were on the Veterans Affairs Committee, where you all helped service our war fighters after they've left. What do you make of this? Do you think that veterans across this country want to see the Defense Department called the Department of War? Do you think that they want to glorify war?
Now, if you've ever been in war, it's pretty tough to glorify it, I'll tell you that. And there's been a lot of movies on since Vietnam and World War II trying to glorify war. Here's what I look at. So we've got ICBM missiles in Montana. We got a bunch of them, okay? Um, and every time you talk about ICBMs, it's about a deterrence. It's about stopping people from doing bad things, not initiating war, but stopping war from happening. And I think this is a prime example why this is a bad idea. If we want to become warmongers and go to war, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to kill young people and spend a lot of money of our nation's treasury. But the truth is, if we want to stop war, that's really where the rubber meets the road. And I think our past military leadership is probably going nuts right now. But I want to say one other thing. This is exactly what this administration has done in every area. Remember, he met with Putin. He wants peace. He wants peace in Ukraine. He wants to stop war. He wants to do this, and then turns around and does things that's very provocative, does things that will not stop Russia or China from doing the things they want to do militarily. And so this is just a prime example of saying one thing and doing entirely another.
Maritza, is it brilliant? Is it Donald Trump three-dimensional chess, or is this as some would say incandescently stupid?
Well, I have a few thoughts on this. So the first thing is, haven't we heard him say many times, like he's the peace president, right? He just wants peace. He wants the Nobel Peace Prize. So where does that fit into a Department of War? And we're seeing this signaling, right? He wants to be this administration, they want to be the tough guys, the strong men. And so it reminds me of like a playground bully going out and saying like, you're not going to call me Johnny anymore, like I don't know, insert tougher name here. Like it's just bizarre to me that we're going to do this. Like, nobody wants their kid to fight in a war. I have a son who's about to turn 14. This is terrifying when we think about this. And then you think about all of the efforts over how many decades to show other countries that we could be allies, that they can trust us, that people in countries with authoritarian regimes don't need to fear the United States as so many would have them. And, you think about Voice of America and the soft diplomacy that has been going on with that to get people to say, okay, America is not this evil empire that just wants to come over and take over and kill our people. What message does this send to the rest of the world, like with the Department of War? And then, even with this whole thing with the targeted strikes on this boat with the alleged Venezuelan gang members. Well, have we seen any evidence? Has there been any due process? Was there any warning to the people on that boat? I don't know who was on that boat more than you two know who was on that boat. But we're just going to start killing people and saying, yeah, well, we knew that they were drug dealers. We knew they were part of the cartel, just like they knew that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was an MS-13 because he had the tattoos on his hand that someone put on there in Photoshop. I just think this sends some really, I don't know. I wouldn't want this message I wouldn't want people to think of me as an American citizen as somebody who wants to go out and create war.
Maritza, you honed in on the key answer to one of the questions in the chat is someone said, yeah, but does anything change policy-wise with this name change? And I think the answer is very clearly yes. And it's not just from the name change. There's broader signaling from this administration that they want to engage in the use of military force in situations in which military force is not justified. And the missile strike in this past week on a boat of 11 drug dealers in the Caribbean is the perfect example. And you can hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. You can think drug dealers, very, very bad, no sympathy for them. And you can also think we don't need to go after them with airstrikes. And the example I've been using is, if down the street from Senator Tester, there was someone who instead of, farming corn, they were growing a whole bunch of different drugs and he called the cops, it would be reasonable for the cops to raid that farm and arrest people. It would be unreasonable for them to pour kerosene and plant dynamite around that farm and blow it up and incinerate everyone alive who's on that farm. That would be considered criminal. That would be considered dramatic overreach. And that's what just happened this past week with the Department of Defense launching an airstrike on a boat where so far we haven't been told anyone on that boat was armed. We haven't been told anyone on that boat represented an imminent threat to the lives or safety of civilians. We haven't been told that those people on the boat represented a direct threat to the United States. Sure, the drugs were coming to poison our streets, but I've overseen dozens of those operations. What you do is you intercept the boat. You arrest the guys on the boat, and you don't just do that because it's the right thing to do. You do it because it helps get at the heart of the problem, because you get to interrogate those people, you find out who their handlers are, and you dismantle the whole operation. If you burn them up in flames, you don't get to find out who they were working for. You don't get to the heart of the problem.
Yeah. And the thing is, who's to say? I mean, anybody could say, well, John Tester is dealing drugs out on his farm. I mean, what's the difference? I haven't seen any evidence presented to say who these people were, just like I never saw any evidence that Kilmar Abrego Garcia in the charging documents is part of MS-13. And so that sets up the precedent that anybody can say, well, they're doing this. And it is McCarthyism. It's the witch trials. It's whatever you want it to be, because you can't just say they did this without evidence. As a journalist, I couldn't go on television every night and say, well, Miles Taylor was dealing drugs, so we killed him. Like, you can't just do that. You have to present evidence. You have to, there is due process for a reason. So we don't know who these 11 people were, but I think the precedent it sets is a scary one. And the thing is that they're not backing down. They're saying this is just the beginning. And last I checked, yes, drug dealing is horrible. These drugs are, the lives that these drugs ruin, it's a huge problem in our country. And I've reported on addiction and substance use for a long time in my career as a local journalist. But the deal is, if you know about addiction, addicts will find a way. And like I said earlier this week, I used to report on methamphetamine. That was the crisis at hand. Now we're talking about fentanyl, and in a few years, it'll be something else. So we also need to talk about the root cause of addiction and why we have so many people who are addicted to these substances. And furthermore, I mean, last I checked, if you're a drug dealer, it's not punishable by death in this country.
Senator,
Well, I just
will your former colleagues, stand for this? I mean, it's one of it's such a great absurdity that Donald Trump, who by the way can't change the name of the Defense Department. That's the part we didn't mention. He can't change the name of the Defense Department without Congress. But will your former colleagues just kind of abdicate their role as a Congress and just say, yeah, all right, we'll let him do it?
God only knows. They have for the last 8 months. I don't know why things have changed now. They're deathly afraid of Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you, I don't think there's a few of them that like everything he's doing, but there's a lot of them that don't. And I think they're just afraid that they're going to lose their position in a primary that's dictated by MAGA voters. And I think over time, I think between now and the next election, I think we're already seeing it. We're seeing a lot of these MAGA voters going, wow, there's promises made here, like we were going to reduce inflation. That didn't happen. The promise made they were going to release the Epstein file. Well, that hasn't happened. There are all sorts of promises. We're going to look out for rural America. Well, that hasn't happened. I mean, there's all sorts of promises that are being made. So I think that haven't been followed through with. So I think some of the voters out there are starting to realize that. And I think there's going to be more of them realize it going forward. So if I was in the United States Senate, what I would say is, just like I used to say for 18 years, who gives a shit? Let's do the right thing. And let's do what's right for the country, not what's right for the party or not what's right for somebody who wants to be a dictator.
Senator,
I,
it sounds like they.
know,
Oh, go ahead,
sorry,
Marisa.
Miles. I know Senator Tester's face by now, and when I was talking, he made a face like he was going to challenge me on something. So I want to know what did I get wrong, Senator?
You didn't get anything. You didn't get anything wrong as usual. Your comments were perfect. But
Oh
but I
yeah.
would also point out that how much the missile cost that took out this drug deal. I mean, was that the most cost effective way to do it? And secondly, what a distraction. What a distraction from all the bullshit, whether it's inflation or whether it's undoing our public health system or whether it's telling our allies that no, we're not going to be on your side anymore because every time I need to make a military decision, I call up Vladimir Putin. Okay. So all this stuff, I think part of it is a distraction. The other thing is that, look, I hate goddamn drug dealers. Let's just be honest. So if they're going to take somebody out, who's going to argue the fact that, well, got rid of some drugs? The point is, though, is like Miles said, there was a better way to do this, a more cost-effective way to do this, and a better way to get to the heart of the problem to stop it than just dropping a missile on a damn boat.
Well, there's another thing here that I don't think anyone has talked about yet, which is if this was indeed a violation of the laws of war, which it seems very clear it was, the president himself may have immunity, according to the Supreme Court. But as a reminder, everyone who was in that chain of command, especially if they received legal guidance at any point from any of the lawyers inside the Navy, elsewhere in the U.S. military, that this might not have been legal, they're potentially liable. These are people who could be hypothetically court-martialed for their actions. And just because Donald Trump is the president right now doesn't necessarily save you from that. And I think that's a really important message for people to understand in the government, because over the next 3.5 years, they're going to be asked to do more illegal things by the president of the United States. And he may not extend his pardon power to you for doing those things that are illegal. Sometimes Trump might try to dangle it out there to get people to induce them to do things that are illegal, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to be protected. And so, I think this is going to be an area, by the way, this is not going to go away, especially if the Democrats retake one or both houses of Congress. There's going to be an inquiry into who knew what when about this boat. And it's not just about those 11 drug dealers on the boat. It's that if this administration can unilaterally conduct airstrikes against unarmed people, there's no telling to where they could extend those authorities and those actions to. But look, tell me if I'm wrong about that.
But I
No,
do
I
think
think
it's
you
important to say alleged drug dealers, Miles, because if we're just going with what the White House says, you're guilty of treason. So, like, I think we need to put in alleged because I don't know if these were actual drug dealers. They say they were, and maybe they were, but I think that an important note.
and because Maritza started talking, Miles, I forgot the wonderful comment that I was going to make.
But it was going to be
Sorry.
good.
It was going to be very, very good. It was
It
going to
was
be.
going to be the best comment the senator's ever made. He's believe me, no one makes better comments than the senator.
We talked about the hypocrisy of the renaming of the Department of War, and Maritza, both you and the senator have pointed out that Donald Trump ran as the peacemaker, and very hypocritically and ironically, he's renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War. I wrote about another glaring hypocrisy this morning, and it's one that I haven't seen very many people talking about, which is Donald Trump also ran as the warrior who would destroy the deep state. And in a historic irony, he is actively constructing a deep state, definitionally. And what's wild about this is, the three of us know that there was never actually a deep state inside the federal government. There was never a secret cabal of people working together to thwart the president's legal orders. That didn't exist. If there was if there was anything, it was a loose confederation of people who said no to the president whenever he wanted to break the law. If that's a deep state, yes, that did exist. There were people in the first Trump administration, myself included, who said, no, Mr. President, we can't do these things to break the law. Clearly, those people no longer existed. But as you just said, Senator, now Trump is systematically trying to build a deep state, and he's starting with federal law enforcement agencies like ICE and the FBI. And this deep state is a two-parter. Part number one is they've been purging the federal government, and especially those agencies, of disloyal people who are not willing to implement the law according to the president's view, but who are upholding their oath to the Constitution. And part two is they're trying to stack the ranks of those agencies with partisan loyalists. And both ICE and FBI are lowering their requirements for entry. They're lowering their training requirements. They're messaging actively to sort of MAGA audiences to try to get thousands of them to come in and take these jobs so that they can advance the president's agenda long after he's left office. I want to know, from both of you, how do you counteract that? I mean, there are so many things in the Trump administration to be worried about, but they are installing civil servants into these jobs with the goal of making them a long-term MAGA deep state. What do you even begin to do about that to prevent the civil service from becoming partisan in this country?
You first, Maritza. I'll go if you'd want me to, but you should go first.
Well, let me just say, I'm going to send it to Tester here, but he has been talking about this, Miles. He said this in several of our episodes of Grounded that Donald Trump is. If you're looking for the deep state, look in the White House. So go ahead, Senator. There's your introduction.
Well, I mean, what needs to be done, Miles, is what you already know needs to be done. We've got three branches of government. There needs to be checks and balances. There's been no hearings on anything, and we could talk about Signalgate. We could talk about, J.D. Vance getting up talking about how China and Russia are good and all our allies are bad. We could talk about what they're doing to the public health system. We could talk about what's going on in agriculture. There's no hearings. There's no oversight. And if you want to stop this from happening, you got to have hearings because you know very, very well these folks that are in public service, that are in a lot of these agencies, are not doing it for the money. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do for the country. Well, now if you get a bunch of ideologues in these agencies, they're not probably doing it for the money either. They're doing it to try to screw people over. And that's not the direction I want ICE to be going, the FBI, the CIA, any of those agencies. Because, by the way, Miles, speaking of that, has your house been raided lately? I mean, the truth is to go after Bolton like they did doesn't make a lot of sense other than just getting even with political rivals.
Oh, I have a question about that for you, Miles. Do you think your
No.
house is going to be raided?
Um, my honest answer is I think it's a coin toss at this point. And that in and of itself is pretty wild to say. For a private American citizen to say, I think there's a coin toss chance that federal law enforcement agents could come raid my house for a crime that I don't even know exists. I'm not even sure they know what they're investigating me for yet, because the president sort of inverted the justice process. He declared me guilty of the highest crime envisioned by our founders, treason, a crime punishable by death, and then he directed his team to go find the evidence. And so I presume right now, Trump's got some very frustrated federal agents that are trying to prove this very high bar that Miles Taylor committed treason against the United States. I wish them luck. I wish them luck in finding the evidence that I've committed treason against the United States. And he set such a high bar that even if they go find, I don't know, did Miles Taylor commit mortgage fraud like they're alleging against Lisa Cook on the Board of Governors? Well, shit, mortgage fraud doesn't sound like treason. So he set this insanely high bar for them. And people don't need to have sympathy for me or John Bolton. I've been saying that in recent weeks. They need to know that if he can do that against any of us, he can do that against any American in this country that crosses him, whether it's corporate CEO that declines to implement the president's edicts, down to an individual who maybe tries to defend the integrity of an election in a state where Donald Trump wants his candidate to win. He, with the stroke of a pen, can investigate any American citizen. And it's something that I suspect by the end of this administration, I hope we will have the courts determine that that's unconstitutional, that's vindictive prosecution. There's a whole array of reasons that constitutional scholars say the president shouldn't be able to unilaterally direct investigations. But for the time being, he is using that as a cudgel to threaten people in this country.
Senator?
Look, man, all this stuff, and the truth is what are the people out there that are saying, God, he's doing such a great job thinking about it? Are they looking at any of this stuff? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's just crazy what you see going on every single day. In the overall scheme of things, right now, today, the change of the Department of Defense to the Department of War may be the least of all the bad shit that's going on. I mean, the undermining of the democracy, the undermining of privacy, the undermining of our ability to go out and just call out our public leaders for what they're doing. I mean, and the same thing in the business community. I mean, he fires the person that's doing the statistics because he doesn't get the right statistics. And where the hell is Congress?
Well,
Where
did you
is
see
Congress?
the jobs report today?
Uh, I-
22,000 jobs. 22,000 jobs after he fired uh, the person for the statistics. I mean,
That
yeah,
there were created or that we lost.
22,000 created, which is
No, it's
Poultry,
not much in the country the size of this economy.
Trump-sized job creation.
one thing I was going to add, and I know we need to be delicate here when we compare what we're going through to times in our history. But I was talking to Senator Tester about a speech he's going to give, and it kind of caused me to go down my own rabbit hole. And I found this Atlantic article from about a month ago from Timothy Ryback, who's just incredible. But he talks about what was happening in Germany in the 1930s. And there's a whole section in here about a purge of the civil service, about getting rid of people who'd worked for the government for decades, about installing, Nazi loyalists. And I think that this is important history to read about when we look at what is happening right now, because a lot of these events that happened in 1930s Germany, we are seeing happening today. And I think everybody should read this article.
I have to, as we close out here, and I want to ask you both a final question. I want to take your article, Maritza, and raise it with another article that I'm going to try to paste into the chat here. I hope this works, or it's going to paste like my bank account or something like that, which is not exciting for anyone to see. There we go. This is a NPR interview about the article. If you all haven't read Garrett Graff's article about tipping into authoritarianism, he wrote it a couple of weeks ago. And it was kind of on a random day in August. Garrett said, this is it. This is the moment. There's never going to be a bright line, but we've tipped over. And Garrett's a very thoughtful guy. New York Times bestselling author and historian. Really worth reading this article. And if you're just watching the replay and not in the chat, just Google Garrett Graff. Is this the moment America tips into authoritarianism? Another great piece. Final question I want to ask both of you, Senator, and then Maritza close us out, which is what should people be looking for as we go into the fall, as they're trying to find bellwethers about where the direction this country's going, whether or not we are really going to try to turn the tide against this thing or not? Are there things that they should be looking for in the headlines, in the country, in the economy, that maybe they're not thinking about, that are signs about where we are headed?
Well, look, on the positive side of the ledger, during their August break, there was, I don't know, half a dozen of them that had town hall meetings, 535. That's, I guess, pretty good. But the truth is that the people were pretty pissed off, and they let the representatives know. I think that's positive. I think that the people have the power here, and I think that people speaking up is very much important as we move forward, because like I said, I don't care what part of the economy, and inflation has gotten worse, hasn't gotten better. How much have energy prices increased in the last, since Trump took over? Marisa, is it like 10%? I mean,
Yeah.
it's insane going down the line. I mean, this is the first time at harvest time that every breakdown that I had, the parts were thousands of miles away, and I think it's all due to the tariff stuff. So we've got our problems. In public health, we could talk about what they're doing. We talk about what RFK is doing, drive me insane. But I think going forward, you got to see what they do with the budget. I mean, there's a funding bill coming up that's going to be going into effect probably after the end of September, but sometime in that neck of the woods. What's going to be in it? If they continue to take away services from people who need services like healthcare and food support and heating support, that's going to further open up that income gap, and it's going to further take people's trust away from government and put us in a situation where people will want to revolt. And I think everything he's doing is pushing people towards that, because if you don't have any hope, then what do you have? You've got nothing. And so I would look at that budget to see what's in it as it comes forth. You can damn well bet Congress won't have their fingerprints on it. It'll all be from the administration. And if they do, and I hope they do, it'll be a surely change of pace and somewhat refreshing. But I would look at that. I would look and see what the reaction is to this presidential proclamation that's coming out today on the Department of War. I'm sure there's going to be some that stand up and say, "Oh God, this is a great idea," but it's not. It's the wrong message. It's the wrong message to the world. It's the wrong message to the people. So let's just continue to put pressure on our elected officials, our people in Congress. Although I will tell you that I haven't seen many of them do public hearings here in Montana or any public forums. It's by invite only, and I think that's unfortunate. And I don't think Montana's an exception. I think it's that way all over the country. And so Congress has to step up. The courts have to step up. You remember what the Congresswoman from Wyoming said when Trump first got elected. She said, "If the institutions hold up, we're going to be fine." Well, the institutions are getting totally undermined and replaced with people who don't even know what those institutions do. Take a look at RFK Jr. He doesn't even know what the hell is going on in this world when it comes from a health standpoint in America. It was proven yesterday during those hearings. Yet he's the head of the Department of Health. Are you kidding me? This is the kind of stuff that's going on. And continue to watch the undermining, and then try to do everything you can do to try to stop it. Because once it's gone, our kids don't have that opportunity. Our grandkids don't have that opportunity that our parents and our grandparents gave us.
Yeah, they might as well call the Department of Health and Human Services the Department of Viruses, and we should see them rename the EPA as the Department of Oil Spills. I mean, if they want to call things the things that they shouldn't be, then they should go down that path. Maritza, what about you?
On that note, I have to tell you this meme I saw yesterday because I'm a Disney nerd, and somebody sent it to me, and it said, "Where are you gonna go next?" And it said Disney World, and it was polio. So just to make a little bit of fun about what we're in, which is not actually funny at all.
Yeah.
I think, Miles, something happened yesterday that flipped something in my brain as I was watching the RFK hearing. Um, and seeing not just Democratic senators grill him, but some Republican senators too. And then we saw, Senator Thune talk about how he's going to have to answer some hard questions because these confirmation processes, Senator Tester could talk about this, they are a lot of work and a lot of effort to get these people confirmed. And I really think that between what we're seeing with public health and this continuation of the Epstein saga, I think those two things might chip away. And here's why. First of all, we saw the Epstein thing just come back. I mean, they went on summer break, came back first day out of the gate. They have, the meetings with the oversight committee, but also the big press conference with all the survivors. It's not going away. And we see people like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene at that, speaking on behalf of the survivors, going against the White House. But also, when we think about public health, how many times have we heard with the big, beautiful bill? A lot of the effects of that bill won't be felt until after the midterms. But yesterday, I had multiple people write me about not being able to get COVID vaccines in Montana. And this is happening right now, today. And it was brought up in the hearings yesterday. And we saw Senator Warren really go after RFK after he said, you can go get the shot. You can go get the shot. People cannot get the shot. And we are entering the fall respiratory virus season. And that's going to be a big problem for people because getting the COVID-19 shot was not a partisan issue. Yes, there were people who really made it a political issue. But our own Republican Senator Steve Daines was part of the Pfizer trials. That was Operation Warp Speed happened under President Trump, which was so, masterfully pointed out yesterday. I think it was by Senator
It's
Cassidy.
Cassidy, yeah.
So, I think that as people go and feel that they actually can't go get the shot to protect them against a virus that is still very much around, I think that we are going to see a lot of public pushback because they are feeling that today.
I think you're absolutely right. As we go into the fall, there is, I would agree, a change in the air in a lot of different ways. People are realizing that what's happening in this country is more dramatic than just politics as usual. They're realizing that core social services, core public services, the things the government's supposed to do that we pay them for are becoming politicized. They're being denied the access to the things that they would expect. And maybe that's enough to start turning the tide. I don't know.
I hope so, Miles. And I'll tell you something else that we don't talk a lot about, and that's foreign affairs. And I think that these guys are so cavalier with classified information. It's why the Bolton thing is so goddamn ironic. They're so cavalier with classified information there's a price that will be paid for that at some point in time. And of course, this president will act like he didn't understand any of it because that's what he's doing. And we had Jasmine Crockett on a couple days ago. Maybe it was yesterday. Maybe it was a couple days ago. Time flies by. But she said something that was pretty interesting, that this president says a lot of stuff that he just makes up, and that's not normal. That's what not normal people do. And maybe the age thing is real in his case. And maybe people ought to take their eyes off of Joe Biden for a half a minute and start looking at the current president to see if he's fit for office.
I'm right there with you, Senator. I think I'm going to take a picture of my basement and the files in my basement and just do a side by side with that and the files we saw in the basement in Mar-a-Lago because, they've accused Bolton and me and others of allegedly stealing sensitive information. I'll show people what's there. I'll show people what's there, and
Are
they
yours
can
in the
just decide.
bathroom though? Are they in the bathroom or?
Isn't that a weird thing? Who keeps files in their bathroom? I'm just gonna say. I mean, unless you've run out of Scott toilet paper and that's your option. Maybe that's the case. I don't know what the guy's circumstances were. I mean, he was worried about his finances for a period of time there, so maybe that's what he was using those things for.
So the important thing on this podcast, Miles, is that you use Scott toilet paper.
Yeah, are you sponsored?
Hey
That's
guys,
what I was wondering.
I'm going to tell you right now, if you are on, look, if you've got septic, you can't use the fancy stuff. It's just a reality. And when you're on a blacklist budget after you've been targeted by the president, you got to go with what's cheap and gets the job done. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not sponsored, but maybe this is a wink and a nod to Scott. I could be the guy. I could be the guy for you if you want to help out the persecuted. So anyway, I'll just put that out there for the world. What I will say, one thing is, as we jump off here, is I can't wait to find out about the John Tester for President movement. I think a grassroots movement somewhere. I know that there are followers who are watching this right now who want to see that happen. So if someone hasn't bought the domain, spun up the Recruit Tester for President effort, I am goading you to make it happen. And please just start flooding their comments every week in their podcasts with that link. This is how it starts.
Oh. You're gonna drive me to drink, man.
If there is a sponsorship opportunity for Crown Royal and John Tester, we could make that a reality.
I'm not sure we can get it anymore. I've got to save that because of the tariffs.
That's right.
That's right. The last bottle. If you want to drink it, show up at the farm. I genuinely want to thank you both. You are fantastic. For people who aren't following and listening to Grounded, they should be. Y'all bring a dose of realism and levity to these conversations every single day. Thank you so much for what you do and what you continue to do. So really appreciate you joining.
Hey, Miles, not to blow smoke, but thank you for what you're doing too, man. We appreciate it. We really do. I mean, I think about the pressure that you must be under, and you continue to step up, continue to speak your mind, and that's true patriotism. So thank you.
I appreciate it, friends. They wanna shut me up, and I will not shut up. So I'll keep going as long as I can. So thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. We'll be back together soon.
Thanks, Miles.